Hi everyone, I hope you are all having a blessed Sabbath. I want to thank you all for your continued support and the encouraging words that I've received in my last 3 videos that I posted, knowing that I'm on the right path, and I know that all of us, are going through different challenges and battles every day when it comes to our faith. So it's very reassuring to see that we're all in a similar boat, trying to meet the ends when it comes to our faith and upholding it as much as we can. And this whole week, while being in my parents' house in a Muslim household, which, by the way, this is my last Sabbath before I go back to my home. um, I realized during this whole week I have come across times where it was very complicated, where my mom had asked, do I even pray, right? Or she's always talking about that before you leave the house, make a prayer, and talking about Prophet Muhammad and what Allah says, what Allah requires us to do. So I've had those comments, throughout the week pretty much. And all I did was just more like, yes, I understand, or I remember you telling me that, right? But I kept it at bay because deep in my heart, I knew that this does not matter to me, right? Right. What matters to me the most is our Yeshua, our God. As an Adventist, He is my one and only God. There's no other variations. There's no other deviations or different religion that anyone can convince me that He is not the one. Now, I had explained that I pretty much lived, obviously, with my parents for the past 20 years as a Muslim. While growing up, I mentioned in my last video that every weekend we would have a Quran or an Islamic teacher that would come and study with me and my brother how to read the Quran and read the verses, right? But I never fully grasped it. Now, when we are teaching our children religion, we want to explain the essence behind it and why we're doing it, right? What is the reason? What is that actual faith, right? And throughout my childhood, throughout going through my childhood, my years as a teenager, into college, into university, I never really got that essence, as I mentioned before, right? I always saw it as like this necessity. My mom will be happy if I pray 5 times a day, if I read the Quran, if I fast for 30 days, right? If I watch videos about Islam, kind of thing, right? But it never came from a sincere place, right? I only did it out of necessity. Now, again, I'm going to mention this here, is I only have love for my Muslim brothers and sisters, right? I'm not here to slander or hurt anyone's feelings. Everyone is right to believe what they need to believe in, what they want to believe in, right? But when it came to me, this is my perspective. I always looked at Islam as, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, right? Allah is merciful, right? You need to do this. You should not be doing that. You should not be having these thoughts. There's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of rules, right? And as I was growing up, I didn't feel like Allah had that love, right? But there was more fear. Now, in the context from the biblical context, we look at fear as out of respect that we're providing to Yeshua, right? But that's not the fear that I felt in Islam. It was more of, if you do this, you're going to be you're going to be hurting on the 7th level of hell, right? If you do this, you're not only gonna get in trouble with Allah, but also your parents, right? So there was a lot of that fear, that being afraid that He is going to be angry if you do something wrong, right? You're not going to be forgiven, right? And if you want to be forgiven, right, there's no true sense of repentance, but more of, okay, you have to pray more, right? You have to fast more, right? So it was more of So it was that, but also a lot of fear from my parents too, right? Because if my parents found out that I had committed a sin, right, it was not necessarily that it's going to be Allah that's going to be afraid, like upset with me, but more of my parents are going to be upset with me, right? I don't care what Allah feels, but more of my parents are going to be upset with me and I'm going to hear a ton of it, right? So it almost felt like religion, as I was growing up, religion was used as kind of like a bait to keep your children in line and really to show, you know, unfortunately in my situation here is that it's to keep us in line and we don't deviate from it, right? Because even till this day I have a younger brother, right? He's not really practicing Islam, right? But my mom will always pass comments that like you have the devil inside you, right? Or Satan is just making you go through this. You're not breaking through it. You're not praying, right? This is why he's taking advantage of you, right? Or you have the devil's angels all around you, right? So she's always passing those comments to make him fear. And I know she's coming from a good place as a mother. Like she's worried that what's going to happen to my son in the afterlife, right? What's going to happen to him if one day, he gets hurt, right? Or, his time comes. But that's not the way to, to teach the children here, right? We know what's bad and what's right and wrong, right? And I'm reading it when I'm reading the Bible or reading Mrs. White's work, that it's when we see the word fear, it's out of respect for our God, right? Our God knows that we have a sinful nature, right? So it's not going to be that we're going to be 100% pure. We're going to be 100% walking in the path of our God, right? And we're going to have moments of weakness. We're going to have moments where Satan feels that he's got us, right? He got one more believer in Yeshua. But what really matters that I realized in as a Seventh-day Adventist here is that God is very forgiving, right? God is compassionate and understands, right? And he knows that when we truly repent, when we truly ask for that forgiveness, if you really, really repent, he can see it. And it should never be used as a bait for parents or to get what they need from their children. Unfortunately, this was my experience, right? I can't speak about many other brothers and sisters that are in Islam, but from talking to different Muslim friends or growing up with friends that came from a Muslim background, kind of seemed like similar, to be honest, right? Where Islam was almost used as a bait to get things done, right? Or used to continue tradition. Now we see it in Judaism, right? Where we have rabbis that have built so many different rules and traditions and like all sorts of practices, right? Just to what, right? You pretty much altering the Bible, right? We have live rabbis, and same with imams in the Islamic community here, where they're making up these traditions. They're saying that they're more closer to God, so they know exactly what is expected. But in reality, you're deviating from the Bible, right? And in the case of Islam, you're deviating from the Quran. Or take what's mentioned in the Quran and twist it in such a way that serves their purpose. I have to say that I am strongly against imams and rabbis or anyone, especially the big one we have is the Pope, right? Where they're creating all these new traditions, they're changing laws times and times again, right? We see it in Revelation where we are literally facing today where the Pope is actually making changes, changing the laws that our God has put upon us to do. But you have the Pope, and then of course you have rabbis and imams that are changing all these laws that our Yeshua instilled on us to follow. And then they take it upon themselves where they twist it in their own way. This is my opinion here, but they twist it in their own way to pretty much fulfill their purpose too. Because at the end of the day, anything that deviates outside of the Bible, you're fulfilling the purpose of who? The Satan, right? You're fulfilling the purpose of Satan, where Satan's main purpose here at the end of the day is, how do I get more people away from Yeshua, right? Because at the end of the day, it's for him to show to Yeshua, like, look at the damage I've done. Look at all these people, that should be devoted to you, that should know who you are, but they're on my side. And Islam is one, right? Judaism is one, as another one too, and many other religions that we see here as well. Unfortunately, it's deviating from what we see in the Bible, right? Again, complete love for my brothers and sisters from other religions and from the Islamic community here, but this is my perspective. This is what I believe in. This is my opinion, ultimately. When I was 20, just kind of segueing a little bit into what led me into my my journey as a Seventh-day Adventist. When I was 20, again, I wasn't a complete, let's say, a fully devotional Muslim. I didn't pray 5 times a day. I didn't read the Quran for like 2 hours every day. I was very studious. I was studying in as anatomy and cell biology in a very good university, and so I always wanted to become a pediatrician. I wanted to get into the medicine field, so I was very studious. My parents were very proud of me that I got accepted into a very good university, and I'm heading in the right direction. As I was growing up, I mentioned in my previous videos that I am the oldest sibling. I have 3 other siblings. My brother right after me, it has Down syndrome and autism, so he's not able to walk, eat, talk, do anything on his own. So it's been a very struggle for all of us as a family, but we're very supportive and just want to look after him as much as possible, because that brother who has Down syndrome and autism, I know, has a very special place in heaven that God has for these kids, and so he's just precious for all of us. And then I have 2 other brothers too. So as an oldest child, I was pretty much instilled to the point that, like, I need to be responsible. I need to be the one to look after the family and take it, pretty much bring it, continue to advance the family as we go on. But as a Muslim girl, of course, my parents had thoughts of like me getting married, settling down, having kids, but still fulfilling, getting into the profession as a pediatrician. Now, as you have that pressure, there's a lot of pressure on the oldest child, and I'm sure many of us, if you're watching the video, if you are an oldest child, you know how it's like, where your parents are going to instill that additional pressure on you, that you're the oldest child. Your other siblings are going to look up to you, right? So I kind of felt that pressure. And then one day, while I was on Facebook, I came across a boy that's just a couple of years older than me, and he's actually from our same family, right? I never really knew him. My parents never really talked about that side of the family, so I didn't know so much. And we started talking back and forth. We've been messaging each other, and it turned out that, he's the only child, but he knows that pressure. He came from a different walk of life, let's just put it that way, where him and his mom were living illegally in UK, and his dad was working illegally, and so they had a very tough life at the time, right? And of course, he went back home to Bangladesh and was trying to restart his life, and he started restarting his life pretty much in his early 20s. So you can imagine, he's been living in UK for decades, and then suddenly he has to go back home and start from scratch. So I admired that courage, and I admired that he understood how difficult it is, and he's trying to survive and manage in his own capacity while living in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, if you search it up, it's a developing country, and it's gone through its own fair shares of tragedies and difficulties, and it's still a country that is struggling to look after its people. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what's really killing many of our developing countries here, is that we're not looking after our own people that are living in that country, these countries. So I liked that side of him. He was very honest, very direct, and but he wasn't so much again a devoted Muslim too, right? Of course, he'll pray the usual Friday prayer, right? And he'll fast. Again, it's all tradition. Like, if my parents did it, I'm gonna do it, and then I'm gonna pass it on to my children. There's not really necessarily a sincerity. So he also was kind of in the same boat as me. Let's put it that way. We really hit it off, and again, I was 20, right? And then he was also a couple years older than me. So we were grown adults. It's not like we were in our teens talking, right? So this was literally in my second year in my university when I started to talk to him, and I started to develop that interest. I started to like him, and he was in my family. I'm like, this is not going to be an issue, right? Like, my parents are going to be happy that, one, he's Muslim. We call ourselves Muslims at times when there's things that we do. And then two, he's within the family, and three, he's not outside of the culture too. That's the other thing here. As I was growing up, my parents, especially my mom, and of course my relatives, will always say that always marry a Muslim guy that comes from Bangladesh, right? It's always better that way. So there's this stigma that you cannot marry outside of those criteria, and if you do, you're considered an outcast. I've seen it. I had few family members that done that, and they became outcasts. So, but time heals everything, because I noticed with those family members that didn't marry outside of religion, outside of that culture, with time, families start to accept them. And I wish I knew that before. That time heals everything. And but it's what it is. I have no regrets. But anyways, going back to my story here. So he's a couple years older than me. We hit it off. I was trying to like him, and I actually wanted to marry him. The idea didn't pop into my mind until he said to me that he wanted to marry me, and I found that very. It really touched my heart, right? And so that's, of course, when my mom found out about it, and then of course his mom found out about it. His parents were all for this relationship that we had. Mind you, I haven't met with him in person. I've met with him through Facebook. I know he was real because my family knew the family, and literally my parents' home in Bangladesh was really in front of their house. So it's not like I was talking to someone that I had no idea who it is, or they had no idea who it was. Like, this was actually a real person, a real family. My parents, however, were not happy with this relationship, mainly because, one, he had tendencies where he had anger issues, and of course this whole thing about him and his mom living illegally. They were bending rules, and he was just not a good boy. And then on top of that, my parents wanted me to continue my studies, right? They had a lot of aspirations for me, right? And to come to think about it, after many years later, I realized that these are not really my aspirations, that I want to be a pediatrician. It's something more of my parents wanted me to do, right? Wanted me to do, wanted to see me do well. And of course, this idea just popped into their mind that she could be a doctor. In a culture like this, a doctor, a lawyer, and engineer are like the best career professions you can have and acceptable. Anything outside of that, it's not looked upon, right? You're not shown as a good example. Even if you're living a very good life as a good person, as someone that is believes in their faith, and ultimately is just a very good human being, that does not matter. In this type of culture, unfortunately, they look at education, your status, right? And what your profession is. And if you meet those criterias, that's it. You're considered as a good person. But I've met a lot of people in that met those criterias that unfortunately are not good people, right? They're not good people, and they could be even in the guise of being a Muslim, right? The way they would lie in your face, the way that they would betray you, or the things they will do, manipulate, it's just insane. And I've seen this in this culture time and time again. Again, I only have love for my Bangladeshi brothers and sisters, but this is a culture that unfortunately is toxic. And I'm not talking about just this culture here. I'm talking about every culture where they prioritize these three criterias, right? Your status, your profession, and of course your education. If they see those like at the highest prestige level, you are considered a good person above anything else. If you committed a crime, who cares? You are a doctor, right? So it's very toxic. It's very sad to see how materialistic as humans we can get, where we pride ourselves in these little things, but at the end of the day, they're not going to matter. In the eyes of our God, they don't matter. They don't matter if you came from a nobility status. It won't matter that you got a university degree, I don't know, in Harvard University. It's not going to matter at the end of the day that you had $100,000 saved in your bank account. You're not taking all that with you in the grave, right? We saw it many times in history. Look at Moses, right? Moses has warned Pharaoh so many times that, hey, let us go, let our people go to the desert, right? And what did Pharaoh did? Nothing. He didn't stop it. His own people were suffering, and of course they're going to perform these rites. They have all these set up where their tombs will be filled with all their precious gold and clothes, but at the end of the day they're not going to need it. They're never going to need it, because when we're going to be presented in front of our God, who is who is our one and only truth, you are not going to be carrying like all the gold that we have collected, all the clothes that we have gathered, the home that I bought, right? Or the several condos I put together, right? Or that education that I got and achieved. All that will never matter, because we're going to come to God based on what we have done as a human. What have we done as Christians? As a Seventh-day Adventist, where we are a form of Protestants, right? And our main purpose in this world is to basically follow the path that Yeshua wants us to do, right? And this is the biggest struggle. Not the struggle that, oh my goodness, I don't have another 10K in my bank account, or I haven't been able to buy my home and I'm almost 30 years old, right? All these things, they don't matter. And in fact, we're now at the end time. So we have a bigger urgency here to spread that word to everyone that, we really don't have enough time. We shouldn't be worrying about these useless things, because at the end, when the close of probation ends, that's it. Our fates are sealed. So I will continue my story in my next video, but I just wanted to continue to thank you all. Until next time, I hope you all are having a blessed Sabbath. Stay healthy. I will continue to pray for you all, and please keep me in your prayers as I continue on my journey. If you're new to my channel here, I want to mention here that I was baptized as a Seventh-day Adventist voluntarily in 2021. And I am very happy that I got my calling from Yeshua. Yeshua gave me an opportunity and led me to this path. And I am completely fortunate and feel blessed that I took on that opportunity. I didn't listen to anything else. I didn't listen to, what people will say, what society will say, or, what my own parents will say. I didn't care about that, because at the end of the day, these things are not going to matter. What should matter the most is our Yeshua. So thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you all have a blessed Sabbath.